Hey guys, Brian Davis here from Spark Rental. Super excited to be with you as always. And I'm joined today by Steve Trang. Steve is the founder of Real Estate Disruptors and the Close More Sales program. His mission is to create 100 new millionaires, which I absolutely love. So, Steve, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to this.
Absolutely. We often start by asking guests just rewind to the beginning, how you got started in real estate in the first place.
Yeah, I think just like most other people, it's reading the Purple Bible, right? Rich
Yeah,
Dad Poor Dad.
yeah, the little purple book.
Yeah, right. It's that
Love it.
eye-opening moment. So you read that and you realize there's a whole other way to support your lifestyle, right? And so, yeah, I mean, I read that book immediately, started buying properties with my friends, which, in hindsight, probably was not the best way to do business. But so we did, right? Me, three of my best friends, we from the LC started buying properties, bought property up in Munns Park in Arizona, bought a property in Austin, Texas, bought some more properties. So yeah, I mean, I think again, like everyone else, like to find out that there's another way to make income besides having a boss. There's not very many things much sexier than that.
Well, I couldn't agree more. Long before the FIRE movement was a thing, I was trying to replace my day job income with rental income.
Mhm.
It didn't work out as as planned.
Well, yeah, it's never as easy as it appears in a book, but yes,
Yeah.
eventually it works.
Well, so along that theme, let's talk about those early real estate investing deals that you did and what went wrong. As,
Mhm.
as most investors' first few deals, come with a
Yeah.
steep learning curve. A lot of things go wrong. But a lot of those lessons, they stick with you and you learn those lessons
Mhm.
from mistakes more than you learn from your successes. So yeah, walk us through those first couple investments, how they did, what went wrong, what you learned from them, and what you would tell a novice investor today to help them avoid
Yeah, I
some of
would
these
say
mistakes.
for the very first deal, if you have a plan, stick with the plan, right? And so we bought that actually not to keep as a rental, only because it was outside of our market, right? We live in Phoenix. There's a property in Munns Park. It's an hour and a half, 2 hours north of here. So we got it at a distressed price because we just happened to have someone. We talk about we're getting into real estate. Someone's like, I got this deal for you, and we bought it, right? And we got a really good deal on it. The intent was to flip it, right? This was '05 when we started, right? End of '05, and then '06 is when we got the flip done. And all my friends were like, because again, I did this with three of my best friends. They're like, well, maybe we should keep this one as a rental until the market turns around. Right. And I was like, no, we got into this to flip it. I don't care. We're only making $3,000. We got into this to flip it. We should exit this with the intent to flip. And they decided not to. And there's three of them, right? One of me. So we kept it. And we kept it for a while, actually. And VRBO is kind of known now, right? But right now it's basically Airbnb is the big one. But VRBO is actually what we used in '06 to do vacation rentals. So we were using it as a vacation rental to break even, not even the profit, to break even with our more existing mortgage. So
Oof.
that was a tremendous waste of time. And we ended up eventually letting it go into foreclosure. So we spent all this effort, took our eye off the ball. And I put myself in a position where I didn't have the ability to influence the outcome or affect the outcome. So I think there's probably a few different lessons in there somewhere.
Well, yeah. I mean, I've been there myself. It is tough investing with other people. You sacrifice control in exchange for having a lower amount of money in the deal.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, and hindsight's 2020. I mean, 2006, looking back, was obviously a much better time to sell than 2008 through 2012, right?
Hmm.
But you don't know that living in 2006. So
For sure.
yeah, you never know where the market's going to go. So tell us about how you scaled from there. So you did, those first couple deals you did with some other investors,
Hmm.
didn't go according to plan, but of course it never really does with those first few real estate deals. But how
Yeah.
did your investing strategy change and how did you scale from there?
So from there, I got distracted and became a realtor. Right. So like we bought our first property in '05, bought our next property in '06, and then I bought my primary residence in '06. And from there, completely got sidetracked. Started, I became a realtor because as we're trying to buy rental properties, I was talking to this realtor. I was like, this guy's making a lot of money. Like I have a master's degree in electrical engineering. I'm doing well at Intel, and this guy over here is making a lot more money than me as a realtor. What's the story with that? And so I talked to him, And he basically said, Steve, I'll teach you everything I know if you go get your real estate license. So I got my real estate license, worked for him, and completely took my eye off the ball. And I didn't buy any rental properties again until about 2011. Right. So again, lessons learned here is if you got into something for a reason, stick with it. Not to say like you can't observe your options and evaluate, because you've always got to evaluate. But becoming a licensed realtor was not the right move, and I feel like I wasted 9 years of my life doing that. So stick to the plan.
At a certain point here, you also got into wholesaling real estate.
Mhm.
So I guess walk us through. So you got back into real estate investing in 2011. Walk us through what happened from there.
Yeah, so we started buying properties in 11 because I was doing pay per click, right? So 2010, things kind of started changing. The market started shifting, and REOs were dying down, and I became an REO agent, right, to pay my bills, listing foreclosures for banks. So I become focused as a realtor again. It's like, how do I get more listings? I joined this coaching program. They teach you how to market for listings, and one of those ways was pay per click campaigns. And so I was doing my own pay per click and sell my house and this and that. And I realized that the people that Google sell my house, the all the ads and landing pages were more about cash offers than they were about selling my house for top of market. So I changed my campaigns and my websites to reflect that and to get listing opportunities. Right. And I go to these homeowners' houses. I was like, you don't want to sell your house for cash. You want to list it. You're gonna get more money if you list it. And I actually got bullied into buying a lot of houses from these homeowners. Like, no, I want a cash offer now. And so we started buying properties and we started wholesaling them. But fortunately, I've got a wife who's really sharp, right? And she's like, you're not allowed to sell all these properties. We need to keep some of these. So, she forced me to keep some of them. And thank God we did. So the rental properties we have today, most of them came from the properties that she would not let me wholesale. So that was awesome.
Well, and again, hindsight 2020, 2011 through 2015, not a bad time to buy properties. But
No,
again, in
great time.
retrospect,
Right? But
yeah,
I
I
cared
mean,
more about active income than passive income at the time. And she's like, no, you're not allowed to sell this property. There's a good property, a good location. You're not allowed to sell it. We're keeping this one.
well, yeah, it's funny. We talk to people sometimes who are married, and you know, often it is an advantage having that extra set of eyes, on
Hmm.
these deals, and on the bigger picture of your investing strategy. I've also known plenty of investors who were married who their spouse was totally not on board at all with real estate,
Right. Yeah, that happens
and
too.
yeah, and made it harder. Um, so okay, and by the way, just for our audience, explain the term wholetailing because not everyone is familiar with that term.
Oh, yeah, sure. So wholetailing is basically buying a property at wholesale prices, right? 50, 60, 65% of market value, and then just listing on MLS. So wholesale, you're selling to a cash buyer who hopefully they'll pay you 70, 75, 80%, or 90%, when we had this crazy run of just a few years ago. But if you list on MLS, you can get 100% of market value. So we'd buy these properties cash, right? Not even like hard money or private money, like just straight cash. Fortunately, my parents worked really hard. So we were able to buy these properties cash with no interest payments or nothing. So we got to keep even more of the upside. So buying it cash offer, we were the legit cash buyer. And then we list on the MLS. We didn't do very much, maybe carpet and paint, but more than half the properties, all we did was hire a cleaner. Like someone just haul
Wow.
out the trash and put it in. We do the clean ready, where they come in and it's $400, $450 to make the house smell good with Pine Sol and Mr. Clean or whatever. That was it, right? And then we sell it for full market value.
So now, but when you wholesale, you take some losses due to closing costs, right? Yeah, walk us through your calculus today, at wholesaling versus wholetailing, what you specialize in now, and your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so wholesaling is still our preferred strategy because we get in and out real quick, right? You get
Yeah.
10%, a little less than 10%, but around 10% of the market value. So if the property's worth 300, you can clear 30K pretty quick, probably closer to 22. Right? You can clear that pretty quick. That's you get in, get out. You're in the transaction for less than 30 days. That's wholesale, right? You find someone that wants cash now. You find a buyer that wants cash now who's going to flip it or keep in their portfolio. That's great. You get in and you get out. And the cash conversion cycle is really short. So you move your money really fast, you turn it over pretty quick, which is great, right? There's nothing wrong with that. But as you get larger, you want to keep a larger percentage of the profit, perhaps. Then in that instance, I'm going to close on it, keep it myself, right? And then sell it on MLS. So what are my costs? My initial closing costs, maybe about 1.5% for title fees and this and that. But this is just a cash transaction. I'm unrepresented. They're unrepresented, right? Or I guess you can technically argue I was representing myself as a realtor, but they're unrepresented. There's no commission fees. I'm not buying this through my brokerage, right, at this time. So there's not very much cost there. And there was no holding cost because it was their own cash. When we sold it, what are we responsible for? Same title cost again, right? And then 3% commission to the buyer's agent. And then closing costs if there was like, if they wanted concessions, this and that. So, I mean, in and out, we're in it for less than 10% total for holding costs. But if we buy it for, 70% of market value and we sell it for 100%, we got to keep 20% in margin there.
Right.
And that was our profit for doing that deal.
So, and by the way, if anyone's listening out there who's not familiar with wholesaling real estate, it's basically flipping contracts, right? So you get a deal under contract for an outstanding price, and you turn around and you sell the rights to that contract to the actual end real estate investor buyer.
It's arbitrage. It's arbitrage. Right?
Yeah. So you get a finder's fee basically that you build into that. So I'm not a wholesaler myself. I've never really done it. I've bought properties through wholesaling before occasionally. Mm-hmm. But it's always seemed to me that you need to be really good at two things if you're wholesaling real estate. One is finding great deals, and the other is building a network of buyers, right? Mm-hmm. So if someone is interested in getting into real estate wholesaling, because it is a great way to get started in real estate without very much money, you just need the earnest money deposit, basically. So what are some of your tips for both finding outstanding deals and mm-hmm. also building that network of buyers to flip the contract to?
Finding outstanding deals. I mean, this is tried and true, and it's not news, right? So it's not exciting, but driving for dollars, seeing homes that are in obvious disrepair. It's an eyesore to the community. Your neighbors want you to buy this, right? So I would say that's the place to start. I think Deal Machine, right? I mean, for $97 a month, you get like the app, pulls the records and this and that. So I would say that's the best place to start if you're low on capital. Even better if you're doing Uber Eats, whatever, so that you're forced to drive around and then you see properties. Now you're getting paid to drive for dollars. So I think that's the best place to start. Beyond that, it gets pretty expensive pretty fast. I don't think most gurus do a fair job of explaining how much it costs to get into wholesaling, right? Because you talk about pulling data. You got to buy data. You got to skip trace the data. You got to get a dialer unless you're using your phone. If you're using your phone, you're dialing manually. You don't have to get a CRM, but like there's all these costs that are $39.99, $300 a month, right? Pretty quick before you even do your first deal. And so I would say, don't do that initially unless you've got some working capital. I would say either driving for dollars or cold call or door knock pre-foreclosures. That's a great place to start. Also understand, get a massive uphill battle because not everyone, but there are a lot of people doing that strategy because it's low barrier to entry. As far as finding the buyers is not as hard either. This one does cost, depending on which direction you want to go. Investor Lift is one that we like a lot, but to start off there, that's $500 a month. The other option is just go with a realtor. Have a realtor in your network that may or may not be okay with giving you certain access, right? So they can find the cash buyers for you, or you can also work with a mentor in town and just send them all your deals. You're not going to make as much. You're only going to keep half the deal, right? Or whatever you guys negotiate. You can find buyers that way. So instead of selling it to the end buyer directly, you have a co-wholesaler. Some people call these guys daisy chainers. Some people don't like these guys, but they provide value. A lot of my deals I was wholesaling in the beginning. I was selling to Keegley, Jamil Damji, and then he would sell it to his end buyer. And it worked great because we would split 10K fees, 15K fees, and I got to keep 50-50. So that's another way to get started on finding buyers.
That's a great way for newbies to get into this in the first place because it does take time to build that buyer's list, right? So, while you're building your own buyer's list, you can still get started with wholesaling deals if you partner with a co-wholesaler, do a daisy chain, however you want to put it. That's a great tip for people just to get in the game and get started, which is half the battle, right? I mean, just getting
Yeah.
off the bench and into the game is half of it. So, what other tips would you have for someone who is interested in getting into wholesaling, interested in getting into wholetailing potentially? Would you recommend that they get their realtor's license or no?
I would absolutely recommend against getting the realtor license because
Okay.
it doesn't necessarily help you in the beginning. It's valuable later on, right? Because being a good realtor, again, you get good at comping. You have access to other realtors and their cash buyers, and you have access directly to the MLS and tax records, this and that. So, being a realtor is valuable, but not so valuable that you need to become a realtor. I would say, if anything, it's probably just important to have a realtor close in your network as you're wholesaling. I would say one of the skills is underrated is sales, which is where I hang my hat on, closemyself.com. That's where we do a lot of our sales training. Like 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and obviously before then, right? If Brian's in distress and I can get a hold of Brian, I'm buying the deal, right? Because there was no batch skip tracing, right? There was no prop stream. These resources weren't available. You didn't have Privy to comp it. You didn't have all these different tools. So back then, if I can get in front of Brian, I got the deal. Today, everyone has all the same data sources. Everyone's using the same skip tracing providers. Everyone's using the same dialers and the same recycled phone numbers that turn spam and you sell it back. And like there's this whole process now, right? So then how do you separate yourself? Well, the way you separate yourself today, my belief, I'm totally biased, so take this with a grain of salt, is who's the best at sales. Who can sit in front of a homeowner, develop the trust and rapport, and connect with them, fully understand their position, what's keeping them up at night, what's the ideal outcome, are they losing sleep, what are they trying to do to fix the problem, what's it going to feel like when all the weight on their shoulders has been taken off. We go through all that in our sales process, right? So if you can't have that conversation, then you're going to sound like every other wholesaler. It's like, well, that spot in the ceiling, I don't know what's going to cost, and I got to get this house to HGTV condition. And look, I got holding costs, I got closing costs, I got to pay realtor fees, and that it's this whole adversarial, combative negotiation, which also works. I would just argue that if you can put yourself in their position, in their shoes, see the world through their eyes, be empathetic, that you will win more in the long run.
Well, there's no question about that. I mean, I've seen that play out time and time again in sales. So your sales training focuses on wholesalers, not on realtors. Is that correct?
So we've made a majority of our income teaching wholesalers how to buy houses. Yes. It also works with realtors, but I don't know what it is. And maybe I'm just really bad at marketing. But realtors believe they're good in sales and they're not. So I've got that obstacle. But we made a conscious decision middle of last year to just do sales training for all industries. So it's not limited to anybody, but we definitely cut our teeth with teaching wholesalers how to buy houses deep.
Gotcha. All right. Well, obviously you can't give away all of your sales tips or tricks, but are there any sales tips or tricks that you can share with the audience? Whether they're looking to get into wholesaling or just investing in properties in general.
The key things is setting proper expectations. Hey, Brian, at the end of our time together, if we can agree on price and everything else is important to you, would you feel comfortable committing to working with me? Right? Something super simple, something you couldn't say to your mom, right? So I think setting proper expectations up front, the willingness to get uncomfortable, like, hey, Brian, how long have you been dealing with this? What have you tried to do about this? What happens if we can't help you? By the way, where are you going? How awesome is that going to be? Right? Can you tell me, can you describe how it's going to feel when you're finally over here? Right? So having those kinds of conversations, negotiations is not about me versus you in conversations and pricing. It's like, Brian, what are you willing to accept? What do you need to walk away with? And you're like, well, I need this. It's like, oh man, if you need that, I'm not going to be your guy. Right? And then having you negotiate against yourself versus me and just hitting you with that little offer over and over again. It's just me like, hey, I don't think this is going to work. The ability to communicate like, hey, Brian, what you're trying to get is pretty darn near market value. And I think that's great. If you're willing to, put in the repairs, waste some time, get a realtor and all these things, I think that's great. You deserve that amount of money, right? It's consultative. It's not adversarial. If you're looking for a quick cash close where this is done and you go to bed tonight knowing that all your problems are resolved, you never have to worry about this again. I want to do that for you, but I can't do that for you at your price. Right? So now it's like, It's this price and all this, or my price and all the things that you want. But you get to pick which one you want versus this thing where I beat up on you. And then the last thing is we like to prevent remorse. Hey, Brian, sometime between now and the next 30 days, you're going to wake up and you're going to wonder, like, what did I agree to? Why did I agree to sell my house to that guy for such a low price? And I want you to know, Brian, that's a totally normal feeling. So when that happens, it's not unusual at all. So then when they have that feeling later on, they're like, well, Steve said it was going to happen, so I guess it's not unusual. And then they don't freak out and cancel. So those are all the different things we do.
Those are great tips and advice. And I would encourage everyone listening to hit the pause button, rewind 3 minutes, and jot down everything that Steve just said. Because the way that he said it, again, non-adversarial, it's consultative. And throughout the entire thing, a trend in everything that Steve just said is leaving the other party with a sense of choice and a sense of control so that they're not feeling like they're being pushed around by the other party. And that is crucial in sales. So, Steve, those are great tips. You went through them really quickly, which is awesome. So everyone go back, re-listen to that, write it all down, and most of all, walk away with the broader lesson there of not being adversarial, leaving the other person feeling included as in, leaving the decision with them, that they have total control over what's going on. I love that, Steve. So, Steve, if anyone wants to work with you, if they want to learn more about what you're doing, if they want to learn more about your sales process and sales training, how can they connect with you?
The best way to get a hold of me is Instagram at steve.trang. We have Real Estate Disruptors on YouTube, iTunes, and Spotify. And if they want to work with us, closemoresales.com. That's where you can find our offerings on our sales solutions. That doesn't matter where you are in a cycle in the journey in your career. We have an option for everyone in the different seasons of their journey.
That's awesome. So, Steve, thank you so much for joining us today. This was a lot of fun, and we hope to have you back soon.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate you asked great questions. Look forward to doing it again.
Absolutely. Well, guys, if you enjoy these conversations that we have, please rate, review the show. It means the world to us. And be in touch. Brian at sparkrental.com or support@sparkrental.com. We read all these emails ourselves. There's not like a bot somewhere. So stay in touch. Let us know what you want to hear more about, and we will catch you next Tuesday. Bye now.